sad race, as we've loaded into Side Delta, the very first game here on the C stream of IEM Katowice 2024. In the bottom right hand side, we have the red Protoss player representing Basilisk. It is Trigger.
There we go. And in the top left, spawning as our blue Zerg player, playing for Team Vitality, it is Solar. Alright, Lambo. Talk to me. StarCraft II. What's it all about?
What's it all about? It's about mind games, it's about execution, it's about blocking at 15 hatch because Solar went back way too late. He was there at 330 minutes, and the first huge mistake here from the Zerg player, which will result in him basically making an 18 hatchery. Now, he really doesn't want to make the 18 hatchery because he knows I would make fun of him for it. He knows I'm casting the match. So instead, he made the 17 hatchery with 350 minerals. Now, that is just a mistake. But at the very least, for his mentality, he didn't make that tree at 18. But that's a really, really bad side for Solar. Basically, what he wanted to do is he wanted to check, okay, is he on time? Go forward with a drone with his 15 hatch. And he saw, okay, the probe was not on time, but he turned around too late so that he got blocked anyways, which is a huge deal, honestly. It's a huge deal because he already sacrificed basically mining time by skipping that drone and walking down a little bit earlier than usual. So good start for Trigger.
Yeah, phenomenal start here for the Canadian Protoss player who's been so far using the Hero Pylon. This is a pylon that recently got popularized again by Hero in the Masters Colosseum, allowing yourself to send your probe a little bit later down while still managing to block the opponent. So it saves like 2 seconds or so. It does make the wall a little more finicky, but on this particular map, I don't think it's that big of an issue. It's actually a pretty decent wall, at least in my mind, as I'm expecting Trigger fully to go for a Stargate here, right? He is a Stargate beast.
He's a Stargate beast. It is his favorite opener. And, I mean, he already got the block off, so that is the one thing where you can go for the Twilight, but I think he has something pre-planned, and I really doubt that he will change his plan on the spot here just because he gets a weird block. He was obviously also planning on blocking to begin with, and he might also not quite know that Solar actually cut the extra drone. But yeah, he got the block barely, which is always the best case for Protoss. He now goes across the map with the first Adept. Solar going for... has a Ling ready to run by, just in case, after the second Adept leaves. One thing that's really nice for Zerg is if you make the second Adept turn around as your Zergling goes in, but he didn't go for that, because if you were to try and keep the second Adept at home, you want to enter kind of as the second Adept moves out, so a little bit earlier. So now both Adepts join up and are ready to do some damage, whereas Solar gets the free scout in Trigger's main base, which is not as valuable because you're pretty sure it's Stargate already.
Yeah, very true. One drone here is gonna fall pretty much instantly as Metabolic Boost is getting closer and closer to being done. Another drone's actually gonna fall, maybe a third one as well. Good start here for Trigger. The first 3 minutes and 30 seconds have been phenomenal. One Adept actually split off towards the bottom side, ends up dying there for, well, no real reason. That sucks. Solar's gonna try and get another Adept here. Might be capable of doing just that, as the Oracle has activated its Pulsar Beam, but arrives to the scene just a bit too late to save those Adepts. And that's very annoying for Trigger, because that means you're not going to be capable of putting on a lot of pressure. That means if you want to go for a 5 Adept attack, is that, well, it's really not possible anymore, unless you want to warp in 7 Adepts before getting units that actually do something. So yeah, not a huge fan of how all of this went. The one thing that I do like for Trigger, though, is that he threw down that Nexus before the second gateway, so that means the Nexus is going to be safe against any type of Ling run-bys, because it's going to have way more HP. The Pylon, of course, still could be taken out, especially now that that second Oracle has moved out. Ooh, that Adept wasn't safe. And that's going to die here as well. This was a good start for Trigger, but it's slowly turning into a nightmare.
It slowly is. I mean, I still wouldn't be happy with all that has happened for Solar, because the early game was just pretty rough. He made 14 links, still lost 2 drones. He caught some Adepts, but the third Nexus still went down at the timing that it did. But now this is a little bit of a redemption for him, as he does get the Pylon and the Adept. Trigger saw the links and he thought he was fine, even without the Adept, and he chose to move across with the second Oracle, because he flew over all of those links. He saw them. So that was maybe not the best decision, as by now even though he gets 2 drones with the Oracle. I already like this for Solar a little bit more. Like this now is slightly better for Zerg, I would say.
2 more probes here. 3 more probes are going to end up falling against these few links, as it does feel Solar is the slightly quicker player here. Oracle, perhaps in hot water. It's going to be pushed towards the top side of the map. What is the follow-up going to be for Trigger? For now, it seems a low gateway count into Forge Twilight. And the longer you stay on a low gateway count, the more likely it is we're about to see a big gateway explosion, right? Ooh, there's another Link Run, like, just getting way too much damage done here. Solar practically winning the game here with just Zerglings. It's kind of running by, and there's nothing in the wall. Trigger copying hero a little bit too much there, as these links will split up. Force a little pull away. Don't think they're gonna get much extra done here, so maybe not the end of the world, but it doesn't feel good.
I mean, that was really bad. He had an Oracle above the 2 Stalkers at the 3rd base, but that one was without energy, and the Oracle with energy was chilling at the natural, not doing anything. So he once again was out of position, lost 2 more Stalkers and a bunch more probes to the Zerglings. And if you play Blink Stalkers, you really cannot lose your initial Stalkers, because your pressure just becomes so much worse by the Stalker numbers. The entire point of the style is that you keep pressuring and all of your Stalkers shoot while not dying. You can always blink back to the safety of the Oracle, so you want to retain your Stalker numbers. And the more Stalkers you have that put out this constant damage output, the more Zerg units will always die with every poke, basically. So killing 2 Stalkers early is huge there for Solar, who still tries to make some stuff happen. At this point, Trigger, though, has too many units and is relatively safe at his own 3rd base. He's going for a Robo, but at this point, you can't really do anything anymore. He's just a little too far behind in supply. Being a little bit behind in supply is okay as pros, but not by this margin.
Yeah, that's actually the first blink forward that I've seen in my life that was good. So he gets a couple of links for it. Felt like these Oracles had a chance to pick up some drones, as Solar was already mining at the 4th base with them long distance, and there was only a single queen at that point. Trigger decided not to commit, and that actually saved Solar quite a bit there. Double stasis ward, and as the link count is fairly low, these stasis wards might actually be valuable. Solar definitely will need to pop these before running in with the roaches. He can't just send in 5-6 roaches at a time. 4th base being taken here for Trigger, as he's on 5 gases currently. We have +1 finishing up. Here come the links. We'll trigger that first stasis ward, as Glial Reconstitution has finished up right now. And I like that Trigger is still standing around. But he needs to be really careful, because he can't afford to lose any Stalkers here.
Yeah, I think Solar is actually going for the all-in. He realizes with the damage that he dealt, if he just makes units, he can hit a timing where he's significantly up in supply. And he's now trying to go for the counter-attack even with a couple of roaches, because Trigger just doesn't have that many Stalkers here. So he can afford to maybe force the recall back home, and then the Stalkers can't trade on the other side of the map, which means the rest of his roaches can just run across for basically free. Which Trigger needs to stay on this map with the Stalkers if he wants to hold this all in, but I'm afraid he's forced to recall. Good overcharge, he also saves the Stalker at its own natural, while the fight at the front is also going decently for him. This is, I think, a decent start from that blink forward at the natural, though not the best.
Oh, 2 Oracles will fall, and that is a very big deal, because that means you are only going to have a single Oracle remaining. And that Oracle has no energy left either, so really 0 Oracles remaining. Ravagers now are a reasonable thing to build here for Solar, and Roach Ravager with a couple of links mixed in versus a pure Stalker army, especially with these supply numbers, is going to be fairly difficult here for Trigger. Links make their way in towards the main base as well. At the same time, Solar continues pushing into the 3rd. Overlord speed has finished up, I believe, but Queens haven't joined the fight. There's no real need. They're now going to walk across the map, but this is looking bad for Trigger here.
Yeah, it's looking very bad. He went for the right unit there with the Disruptors instead of Colossus, but they just spawned a little bit too late. You can see the difference that the Oracles make, because those Zerglings would have purely been cleared up by 2 Oracles. You don't really need a lot there. You can warp in 1 or 2 Zealots, which is what he did, and then the Oracles take care of the rest. But instead, the Lynx ravaged his entire main base, killed all the probes there, forced the Stalkers to go towards the main base themselves. And I mean, even if it didn't happen, I'm not even sure he could have cleaned up the army, because Solar was just that far ahead from the early Zergling skirmishes at Trigger's 3rd base.
Yeah. Yes, this game 1 is going to end in favor of the Korean Zerg player. GG gets called. As Trigger will need to come up with something else, or at least play a little bit better in game number 2. As Side Delta, I don't think it's the worst map to lose as a Protoss player. Although I've grown to like it, Lambo. You know, you often have this with new map pools, is that you look at these maps and you think to yourself, this one sucks, they all suck. And then after a couple of months, you know, it's like, okay, maybe Heartland isn't so bad. Perhaps Side Delta is playable after all. Maybe there aren't 9 Zerg maps in PvZ.
I usually have the opposite effect, actually. I think, okay, this looks all right. And then usually they become Terran maps over time, is my experience.
As the Terrans figure out that there are locations for tanks that aren't in the open.
Yeah, I mean...
Wait a second. Here only one link can attack my tank. Yeah, it is a beautiful thing indeed. So the second map is going to be Oceanborn. Now, if we're going to see a cannon rush anywhere, Lambo, it's going to be on Oceanborn.
It's gonna be on this map. I know there's one Protoss player who tried this in an official match. I can't remember who it was, but he messed it up a bit. Do you remember that game?
I feel like he forgot his second pylon. I just remember the defending Zerg being Raynor and trying to pull drones, which is a terrible response against it, by the way. But yeah, no second pylon to secure it. Didn't really matter in the end. But yeah, I have seen it being played after that as well, with success, even against Raynor. And I don't know. I feel like it's just a good build to go for, especially if you're down 1-0. I think it's something, you know, it's something cool to do here, Lambo. As we have loaded here into game number 2. And in the bottom right, spawning as our blue Zerg for Team Vitality. He's up 1-0. It is, of course, Solar.
And his opponent... in the top left-hand side, it's the Red Protoss player representing Basilisk, the underdog of the group. But can he make it happen? It is Trigger. Who's definitely not cannon rushing, by the way, because he is trying to block his opponent's base. It would be very weird to go for that block first and then go for a cannon rush.
Yeah.
I have seen it before, but it is very map-specific. There were some maps in the past where you could block and then cannon rush the third base with a single pylon. That the wall of a cannon, in which case it would actually be worth it, but not the case on this map, as Solar actually goes for a normal 15 hatch, this time before the Overlord, which means he forces the hatchery down 100% of the time against the scout timing that Trigger is going for. And the downside of this is that he delays his gas, so his speed will be delayed, which isn't the biggest of deals because your hatcheries are together. Now, what Trigger wanted to do there is block the natural and force the Zerg to take the third hatchery first. And as you could see in the last game, it makes it a lot harder to defend the first 2 adepts. He got 2 drones with it. The adepts both theoretically survived at first. Which is very bad for Zerg.
Surviving. Yeah. That's usually theoretical. Because in reality, you lost both the adepts. But no, it's actually
that's on
correct.
his side of the map, though.
Yeah, this doesn't count anymore.
Doesn't count.
If you die on your own side of the map, you're practically still alive.
I mean, the Oracle is out at that point. It's just your fault.
Yeah. So theoretically, a very good early game in that last game for Trigger, of course. Yeah, in reality, he kind of died to the links. But yeah, I completely agree. It's very comfortable for the Zerg player to have that hatch on the natural. Makes it easier to defend the first Oracle fly and easier to defend the first Adept run by. Just everything freaking sucks as a toss. Now, Trigger is gonna... I'm actually not sure what he's doing with this probe.
He's trying to confirm the third base, basically. You can also pylon block, actually, if there's only 2 Zerglings against 15 hatch. I would not recommend this, because the queen is out earlier than usual, so you don't actually delay it by too much. But 2 links are not enough to kill a probe ever, if you micro properly, of course, which is a big if sometimes, but it shouldn't really happen on this level. As Trigger is now moving out with the Adept, and is going into the Stargate once again. I mean, I have to say, even after he caught the 2 Adepts, I still liked Trigger's position by quite a bit. If he just kept the second Oracle at home, he was completely fine because Solar overmade links. And this overmaking of links is not so much a mistake as it is, I think, a decision, which is very common if you're the favorite against the Protoss, where you think, okay, if I get into a normal position in mid-game, I should be fine. And then at the same time, if you throw some random Adept stuff at me, these links are also, you know, really, really good to have. So it's very common, I think, for the favorite, if he's a Zerg in ZVP, to overmake some links. So I hope Trigger adjusts a little bit and plays it a little bit more safely from minute 4 to 5, where you don't have that many units on the map.
Could actually finish this Adept Shade after already taking a lot of damage from the first Adept. I kind of like the Creep Tumor kills, but I didn't really... I mean, if this works out... Was this worth it, losing one Adept for, what, a drone kill?
That's not bad. He got some... He got some links. I think you can live with this. It would have been even a lot better if Solar, you know, panicked and made even more extra Zerglings, which is not the case here. But Trigger obviously can't know that. I mean, it wasn't the worst, it wasn't the best. I think both players are fine with this.
Spore already up in the natural. That's an early freaking Spore here. One Queen was still in position as well. And the third Queen pops out in that net location. Let's have a look at what Trigger is going to do. Honestly, I like this plan. Just the minute 4 to minute 5 just went so poorly that I think the plan didn't matter so much. Like, he could have been doing anything there and I think he would have died. Just the execution, what was lacking. Drones will be forced to pull away, and Oracle uses its Pulsar Beam to force out a Spore. Good defense so far by Solar, who has a very low Zergling count, only 5. It's gonna get away with it most likely as well. A couple more Adepts are being warped in, and we'll start shading across the map. Do we have any larvae available? Yeah, plenty of larvae available. So links will be produced. Okay, I was going to say very conservative response, but it's going to get 8 links out. I think that is a reasonable thing to do here. So we have currently 3 oracles. 1 oracle on the far right side, 2 oracles with the Adept setup. That means that creep can be denied. And due to these early 2 creep tumor snipes, that actually is a pretty big deal. There's not going to be a whole lot of creep out if these Adepts do finish up their shade as well. Bunch of drones going down. At the same time, the oracles at the third base flying in. Good moves here by Trigger, warping in 2 more Adepts. That one I'm not entirely sure of. I feel like in this type of situation, where you already used your Adepts, your opponent keeps the links alive, just warp in 2 Stalkers for safety, right? You don't really need any extra Adepts. You have a battery already as well, so I feel like this is... it was a bit of a panic warp in there. It's going to make his follow-up Blink push much worse. Keeping 1 probe behind that wall as well. I think this early game, or the first 5-6 minutes, have gone much better here for Trigger.
Yeah, I mean, Solar did overmake links in a little bit of panic himself, so I think that is fine. The one thing that is kind of bad for Trigger is that he lost an Oracle in the main base of Solar. Ooh. Why did the multi-prong happen? Because he tried to focus fire drones at the third base and Micros Adepts at the natural, and the Oracle in the main of Solar died to the Queens. So that is actually a pretty big blow to him. But other than that, I like his position a lot more. I don't think Solar can just run over the map, run over Trigger, and run across the map and run over Trigger with pure roaches. I don't think that's what we're gonna see here at all.
Yeah, I'd be especially given the fact that there's also a +1 melee upgrade, right? This is not really in the line of expectations. Did go up to 6 gas pretty quickly already. As a Spire, yeah. This is a typical Solar move as well. I think there are very little European Zergs that like to play this way.
Yeah, I mean, I like it sometimes, but it's very player dependent. Who I'm up against and what you scouted so far. Trigger is actually going for double Robo plus Blink, and Stalker Colossus is actually very good against this. You usually do not want to go Spire against this unit composition because you already have the Blink Stalkers ready, and Colossus are actually quite good at dealing with like multi-prong. It's fairly easy to split your army with this, if you're the Protoss. The one thing that Trigger needs to do though is he needs to scout it. He has an observer at the other side of the map. The Spire is behind the main base, so he would need to get there somehow with the Oracles. He didn't see the gas timings whatsoever, so it's very difficult for him to figure out what exactly is going on. The one thing that would lead him to see that this is in fact Spire is at least scouting the gases at the 4th base. That's basically a dead giveaway, but he needs to scout for it.
Yeah. Another thing that of course can kind of give it away, is hold that thought, we have a little bit of an attack, is if there's just pure links. But Solar actually has built 7 roaches as well, so this doesn't look super suspicious from the Protoss perspective, right? You want to be more ling heavy anyway as the Zerg if you open up with +1 melee. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this looks standard. Then the gas count is going to be the next important thing. Even just seeing the 6 gas as early as Solar went for would have been a huge tell. And then the 8 gases, as you mentioned, are just a dead giveaway. I feel like Trigger is playing this much safer because he has lost that 1 extra Oracle. So he doesn't have the triple Oracle here. 15 Mutas now on the way out. I think that got spotted by the Revelation there, but I don't think Trigger was looking at it. The Stalker's actually in trouble already just against the ground army. The Mutas are, you know, just grouping up and gonna move towards the far left side of the map here. this is a serious issue for Trigger because he has nothing ready. There's not even a pylon in the natural that could potentially build a battery. He's just pumping out Colossus 2 at a time, has pretty much cut his Stalker production at, well, what are we at right now? At 15. I think he's pretty dead here.
Yeah, he needs to recall. He doesn't even have energy at the natural to recall at this point, so he's warping in 2 Stalkers, because that's the gateway units that he has ready right now, because he's counter-essing at the same time with a War Prism. At least the Stalkers were relatively close by, because Solar forced him back, kind of shooting himself in his own foot there. As the Stalkers are now retreating towards the main base. So many probes already going down. At least a couple of mutas are occupied on Solar's side of the map against the War Prism, but that one goes down as well, which means the counter pressure is gone. And the mutas just turn around, kill more probes at the natural, and just the lack of scouting here for Trigger being his, yeah, it's very hard for him right now.
Yeah, it is indeed very difficult. Of course, Solar still needs to do something else. I mean, killing 18 workers is great, but you're also investing a crap ton of gas into this. So this attack on the third base could be important. I mean, Stalkers now start to fight back. We'll take out a lot of mutas. This is a terrible fight here coming out of Solar. Losing a lot of mutas, and with that, a lot of momentum as well. Colossus, meanwhile, slaughtering all of these links here. Solar, with some absolutely god-awful engagements here, is gonna give Trigger a lifeline.
That is a lifeline, and that's a big one, because his army right now is better. Solar is still trying to force Trigger back home, but at this point, with the Phoenix that is reinforcing, not Micro though, plus Stalker weapons, he should be able to defend that. Now he has 10 probes, and he's had those move command on the Colossus for the last 2 minutes, so he's had a lot less mining than he's supposed to. But Solar can't fight the army, so Solar is going full base trade at this point. And Trigger's army should have more damage output, so should kill some bases quicker. And then at that point, Protoss also has recall. So I hope he tries to split up his army to where he kills a lot of bases as fast as possible, and then tries to recall and save his bases, or at least more than are left from the Zerg.
Yeah, we also, of course, have these Phoenixes, which I'm not even sure if you really want to try fighting the mutas with 1 or 2 Phoenixes. There's so many, so if they turn around, you lose. Probably better using your attention to indeed kill your opponent's bases quicker, then go for a recall. Muta count still very high as the static defense is going down on the side of Trigger. The same time, though, these splits coming out of Trigger actually are good. He's taking out 3 bases at the same time. We still have some mining in the main base as well. Second Phoenix is going to hit the field. I really think using that Phoenix here against the mutas is a mistake. It might distract these mutas for a second, but if you lose the Phoenix, that is much worse. And you're giving up attention that could be used at clearing drones of your opponent faster as well. I think Trigger's going to lose all of his probes before Solar's going to lose all of his drones, no?
I mean, he needs to go for a recall, because he's going to lose all of his buildings at this rate, as Solar is on top of both of the Nexus. And yeah, he needs to recall to his third Nexus. He doesn't have any probes left, but Solar also doesn't really have that big of an economy, as Trigger actually left some units on the other side, which means the mutas can dive on top of the Stalkers, and he just didn't recall enough of the Stalkers. I don't think he was ready to split all of his units there, as the Colossus are basically left by themselves. They should go after these units, but at this point it will become very, very difficult for Trigger to even just win the straight-up army engagement.
And when you say difficult, you mean impossible. It is 23 mutas against 6 Stalkers. He's gonna go for the elimination play right now, but that also isn't gonna work. I actually wonder if even with those extra Stalkers, he would have had enough to deal with the mutas. The muta count was so high. I think it was 26 mutas to like 17 or 18 Stalkers. And there were 2 Phoenixes with it. If you have no sentry there for Guardian Shield, that's still gonna be a pretty rough fight. Yeah. I mean, if he recalled everything, also the glaive spawns more on Zealots. As GG is called, Solar takes his first series 2-0. Not the most convincing second game, but overall pretty good.